Geronimo editions. This is timed at 11:30 GMT on Saturday, the 26th of August 2023. She'll be talking about baby angel Geronimo, and we shall be talking about the ramifications of all the unjust high court cases that are dealt with in the complex of buildings called the Rose of Justice, situated in the Strand. It is situated between the High Holborn Station on the one side and the Temple on the District and Circle line on the River Thames. So baby angel Geronimo has been the subject of 3 High Court challenges brought by Helen MacDonald against the DEFRA. DEFRA is the UK central government department that is supposed to be funded to protect and a typical example of the corrupt United Kingdom state and the corrupt United Kingdom state that is given veneer, legal facade, legitimacy by the equally corrupt judicial system that is perpetrated through the operation of the divisional courts. One of the most active divisional courts being the Queen's Bench Division. And the Queen's Bench Division had 3 sittings, apparently on the surface, to consider Helen Macdonald's, baby angel Geronimo's mum in South Gloucestershire, arguments against the packs of lies of DEFRA. And instead of looking at the evidence, instead of examining the all 3 judges who sat separately, the first one was Murray, and the last one has been so far Griffiths. All 3 of these liars lied, and they lied, and they lied, and they lied. Now today, Saturday, the 26th of August 2023, the Times newspaper owned by the Dirty Digger Rupert Murdoch, for a strange reason, carries an interview with Rory Stewart. Let's check if we can locate the interview in the Times. Interview that Rory Stewart has apparently given. The page 1 trailer on the Times today, of course, contains the statement attributed to Rory Stewart, who calls him Boris instead of Johnson. And he says that Boris is a complete disgrace. I wouldn't call him Boris. I'd call him Boris Johnson. He's a complete disgrace. Has always been a complete disgrace. And there is no way that he could be described as anything other than a complete disgrace. So the review section doesn't have the interview. Let's check if the weekend section has the interview. Because I can't find the magazine, which usually is contained within the Saturday edition of the Times. I don't know where this Rory Stewart interview is. So I can't find the Rory Stewart so-called interview. So I'll have to probably check and see if the magazine has been published, because there is no sign of Rory Stewart's interview in the thing called Weekend, and nor is there any sign of him that I can find in the section called Saturday Review. And running through the pages again, and there is no sign of the Saturday Review, in the Saturday Review, of Rory Stewart's interview. So why did the fucking Times not give the fucking details as to where the fuck is that supposed to be found? I'm looking at the Times online, checking if the Rory Stewart interview is somewhere located, still not finding it. Where the fuck is the fucking Rory Stewart interview? Fucking shit! and it fucking doesn't have it. Not on the fucking Times website. Fucking search. There is no fucking sign of that fucking stupid piece online. So where the fuck is that supposed to be? You fucking shits. All right, let's go to the item in the Evening News Standard yesterday, Friday. It's a piece by somebody called Young Kim. Young is spelled normally, Young is spelled Young, but it seems the Chinese Young. Chinese Young has got so this is dated the 21st of August, and this is a piece headed Fashion Legacy of Sex Pistols creator Malcolm McLaren being erased. Now, this is the same kind of issue that two-page spread in the Evening Standard. So this is the piece that is being published under the section called Insider. So let's see what this Young Kim has to say in terms of the originals. statement about Vivienne Westwood. So, young Kim is saying that I'll get to the item to get the exact words young Kim is saying about Vivienne Westwood. So she says in the second paragraph, young Kim says in the second paragraph, she, Westwood, made it a lifelong mission to rewrite history, trying to erase Malcolm McLaren's fashion legacy. A gentleman, McLaren didn't think it right to speak ill of a woman and let it go. This was a mistake, as she made sure he was never credited for the clothes from their partnership, bearing labels all designed by him, some marked with both their names, if she could help it. Whenever she gave credits for the clothing designed during their partnership, she insisted he be left out. How could she have expected him to stay with her forever? McLaren was kind and decent to stay that long, and ultimately Garia. When they met, he was a naive and damaged teenager in art school, coming from a dysfunctional and negligent family, only just finding his feet with like minded peers. The last thing he needed was to end up with a baby aged 20, with the first woman he had slept with. When I met Fred Vermord, I'll read that again. I met Fred Vermorel, McLaren's art school friend, the first words out of his mouth were apologetic. I was the reason Malcolm met Vivienne. That's his friend, Fred Vermorel, who told him. Vermorel had been friends with our younger brother who was studying film. Vermeulen said as soon as Westwood saw McLaren, she became obsessed with him. He was not interested, understandably, in an uneducated provincial woman 5 years older than him who had run away from her husband with a young child. Like most teens, McLaren was into rock and roll, running wild with other students and following artistic and intellectual pursuits. When nothing else worked, she moved into the student flat he shared with others and walked around naked until she got his attention. As McLaren left fashion after their partnership was dissolved, and she continued, it was easy to convince the public that he had no creative role in the clothes. However, the reverse is true. McLaren was the designer and Westwood acted as his first assistant, realizing his ideas but contributing certain ideas from time to time, as assistants do. He came up with the concepts and made all the decisions for everything, including the fashion. I was a dictator, he told me. The shop at 430 Kings Road let it rock, too fast to live too young, to die, sex, seditionaires, world's end, and at Christopher Street, nostalgia of mud, which he started on his own with art school friends, and the concepts are solely under his control. During their years together, Westwood learned everything about fashion and marketing while working with McLaren, who combined his fashion background. His technical knowledge was phenomenal. His mother had a dress factory, and his grandfather was a Savile tailor. With art school education and obsession with pop culture to design truly innovative clothes that verge on artwork whose power remains relevant today. You can tell who came up with what during their partnership because, in contrast to McLaren, Westwood's obsession with high culture and historical costume, there was a generation gap between the two. McLaren was a baby boomer who grew up with pop culture and looked forward. She, that bit older, so that she was a part of the generation that came before, that never understood pop culture and looked to the past. This explains Westwood's career. It's schizophrenic. The first part, designed by McLaren, is at dissonance with her solo career, which focuses on corsets and crinolines, with soundtracks by Tchaikovsky. The rock photographer Bob Gruen, who still treasures the clothes he bought when McLaren was involved, scratched his head and wondered how Westwood could have gone from those to the clothes she designed solo. When I explained, he finally understood. A perfect example to dissect is the world's end pirate shirt. The 18th century pattern comes from Westwood's interest in historical dress, but McLaren imbued it with everything that made it relevant to the contemporary world. The squiggle print, the romantic notion of black beard, an outlaw McLaren loved, and music pirating. And of course, he dressed the group he managed at the time. Bow wow wow in the clothes, styled them brilliantly, and wrote C30, C60, C, Go, a song about music pirating. And thus the new romantics took off, just as he set off punk, hip hop, voguing. More egregious than Westwood were professionals, museums, institutions, journalists who were supposed to be knowledgeable, unbiased, and have integrity. For me, the most shocking was the V&S 2004 retrospective on Westwood, where we found out at the 11th hour that McLaren was not initially credited adequately for his work, a significant part of the exhibition. He was not credited for any of the clothes he had designed. His name was cropped out of archival documentation, and he was cropped out of photos. We were forced to take legal action to correct this. Unfortunately, we could only do major damage control at this late hour, so we had to wait for the next hour. masterminded by him, which are tragically repeated since the VNA is considered an authority. Besides these, I have had to go running after conspirators in this country, that is the United Kingdom, and beyond. They all made corrections, but they are that Westwood and her company supplied erroneous credits is not acceptable, especially when McLaren's name is on the label inside. McLaren's role in World's End was not recognized properly in a Westwood World's End X opening ceremony collaboration, which mainly referenced designs from the partnership. When I declared publicly that Westwood was erasing McLaren's legacy, I was hit with a defamation letter from Westwood and her company. I defended myself with decades of evidence and I never heard from them again. But the damage has been done. This spring, someone sabotaged my wall text of McLaren's bio for the Beyond the Street exhibition at the Saatchi. It was secretly changed from in these shops McLaren sold the clothes he designed with Westwood to McLaren sold the clothes designed by Westwood. I had it taken down instantly and corrected. As much as Westwood exploited the work with McLaren, which had made her reputation, she also resented them. He told me, Vivienne hates these clothes because they are all my ideas and designs. She doesn't understand why her own ideas, her solo career, are not considered as important. He explained that she wasn't capable of talking about the clothes for the same reason. It pained McLaren's to see, it pained McLaren. Why is there this McLaren's to see? We'll check that one grammatically in due course. It pained McLaren to see inferior fraudulent fakes passed off as his work, as it would any artist. He had put great care, attention, and thought into every detail, and now his work was being diluted and distorted. People would think he had made these terrible versions. He said, however, that Westwood would be happy about them. She wants people to forget what the original clothes were. This is why she refused to take a stand against the fakes. After McLaren found a new girlfriend and moved out of his home with Westwood, he was willing to continue working on the fashion with her. At her request, he had set her up as a fashion designer, something he was not personally interested in, and financed the new business model of catwalk shows and wholesaling through his music work. But Westwood made it impossible for them to work together. The episode of her throwing a brick through his window is well documented. McLaren told me she deliberately ran up bills, ordering clothes she didn't need, to punish him because he was liable for it. No matter what he did, she wouldn't stop. Finally, she agreed to leave the work in March 1984. in the Altavali Park in 2008. In the Altavali Park in 2008, it was probably the last day of April, 30th of April 2008, just a few days before the 2008 London mayoral election. Candidates, the main candidate for claiming any connection with Tower Hamlets was, of course, Ken Lying Still Livingstone. Ken Lying Still Livingstone arrived there. This was a weekend, so we can check the date. Accompanied by Tony, I said that again, accompanied by Tony Benn, Vivienne Westwood, and I think it was Bruce Ken. Now, none of these people belong to Tower Hamlets. None of these people had anything whatsoever to do with the community in Tower Hamlets. So the rally, spot for the rally, was an election rally in of the individuals that would the corrupt gang that is part of the two years for the election was held. But this East London Mosque in Whitechapel Road, which is a few hundred years to the right of the Altavali Park going east. There was no connection. The connection between Ken Lying Still Livingstone and members of the ordinary demography in Tower Hamlets of whatever background, whatever ethnicity, whatever faith group, whatever. But the sighting of that rally in the park called Altavali Park was very significant. It was stealing the name Altavali and the campaign against the racist murder of Altavali. That was the purpose. Now, I obviously was there for the records to observe the records and the evidence. So when I saw Vivienne Westwood, I aimed my camera at her, and she looked like she had constipation. Her facial expression was very disturbed and very unimpressed. I don't know what she thought I was or who she thought I was, but she obviously was a racist, and she thought that here was an Asian man who was, she must have thought, who was not even aware of the greatness that she was. But I was. I had known all about Vivienne Westwood as an artistic prostitute all along. And I had done that before reading the case that I have just read today in this edition from the Evening No Standard website. Westwood, I had taken a few frames She waited looking at me with the expectation that I should say something to her. What the fuck did she think I would say? She must have thought that I should say that I was privileged. But not only was I not because I was there to collect the gathering as the evidence of the corruption of Ken Lyons to Livingstone. And the fact that three races, Bruce Kent, Vivienne Westwood, and Tony Benn were brought there by Ken Lyons to Livingstone, who clearly thought that the local electorate in the population in Tower Hamlets, who they thought were all Bangladeshis because that was the part of the population that the liar Ken Livingstone must have told them about. And Tony Benn, Vivienne Westwood, and Bruce Kent must have thought that we would all be, collectively speaking, we would all be grateful to see the sights of these great people. Nothing could be further from the truth. Anyway, Vivienne Westwood stood there after I had taken the snaps of her, and she expected me to say something. There was no way that I could say anything to her. And if I did, which I didn't want to do, out of courtesy and dignity, I would have told her to fuck off. She was as ugly as her character, as painted by young Kim in the Evening Standard, dated yesterday, which is Friday, the 25th of August 2023. In any case, Vivienne Westwood never, ever made a contribution to anything that could be noticeable. And reading this piece by young Kim in the Evening Standard, which is on these 2 pages, the spread is Westwood tried to rewrite history and erase McLaren's fashion legacy. This is the one that, the only piece that I have seen that actually makes a precise assertions about the dishonest, corrupt, disgraceful, shameless Vivienne Westwood. The only other pieces that I have seen since 2008, I think, are in the private lie. But those relate to her dishonesty and her corruption, Vivienne Westwood's corruption and dishonesty. But they don't refer to Malcolm McLaren at all, as far as I can recall, without looking at those copies at this point. We shall be updating on Vivienne Westwood in the context of Ken Lyons still racist, bringing her to mesmerize the demography of Hamlet's Bangladeshis. Essentially, that's what they were targeting. Westwood was used, and when I spoke to I didn't even speak to Tony Benn because I had observed Tony Benn over decades, and I knew that Tony Benn was a liar and a fraudster and a faker. How did I know that? Well, one of the things that Tony Benn claimed knowledge about was the events that took place in the decades in the subcontinent before the August 1947 so called transfer and the so called creation of the two states, Pakistan and India, in August 1947. Asked Tony Benn to comment on his knowledge, presumed knowledge, of Mohanlal Karamchand Gandhi. And the answer that Tony Benn gave, which can be checked on the records, because he recorded all his utterances, as far as I know. The answer that Tony Benn gave was as empty, as dishonest, and as pompous as it could be imagined. Now, when he passed away, his elder son Stephen restored the membership life peerage and became the new Viscount, which Tony Benn the liar had claimed to have abolished out of principle. He didn't. Now, in 1980s, Stephen Benn, talking to me on the principal floor, so called, of the county hall, wrongly said he was wrongly predicting, that I would become a member of the House of Peers. So we shall be updating on young Kim's condemnation. It's an overdue condemnation of this stupid Vivienne Westwood in due course. The 2 pages spread on the Evening Standard, pages 8 and 9 of the Standard of the Friday 25th of August 2023. If the camera can catch this, I don't know if it can, but have a go. First page, first side, page 8. That's the so that's the page. Secondly, the coverage on the papers today, that is Saturday, of course, in the Free Street papers include include the mugshot that the police in the USA took of Donald Trump, and the page one picture on the Murdoch scum of that mugshot reads America's most wanted. America's most wanted. And this is the theme actually in the rest of the Fleet Street papers. And what I want to say about that, world exclusive original, of course, is this, that all the Fleet Street papers, the British media, have been running a parallel kind of contradictory two lines about the future of Donald Trump in the context of the 2024 scheduled USA presidential election. They say that among the Republicans seeking the Republican Party's official nomination as the candidate for the Republicans Party, Trump is way ahead of all of them put together. And that all the reports about Trump being indicted and Trump being arrested or Trump being the more charges. Now, they don't say, none of these newspapers, British newspapers, have said, none of these British titles has said why that is the case. Unless, of course, they are saying that America is the most corrupt democracy and that the British press don't give a fuck just how corrupt the USA democracy is. And that the British press don't give a shit whether the Americans are the official country of criminals. Because how can this be that the more criminal charges are laid against him, the more indictments that he is landed with, that his electoral prospects goes up? How can that be? Unless those people who are going to cast those votes for him at the critical, relevant election time are so corrupt, so ignorant, so stupid, in which case America is completely gone, is done for. So we shall be, of course, having to update on all of those in due course. Now, going to the crimes of Keir Starmer, the criminal, it says, the I newspaper says the Labour Party under Keir Starmer is heading for a landslide at the election, and that Starmer is solidly ahead of Rishi Sunak as measured by the pollsters. And yesterday, the news item about Starmer was that Labour Party had lost 25,000 members, despite the fact that Labour Party income had increased. That is a contradiction. So the only conclusion about that is that it's not the Labour Party, because Keir Starmer has politically murdered the Labour Party. What is being paraded as the Labour Party is nothing to do with the Labour Party. What Starmer is parading as the Labour Party is the Conservative Party. Murdered the Labour Party already. About this lady. A football match on Orkney was thrown into disarray when a bird swooped in mid game and reversed the fortune for one side. And the team is Stormness were 4-0 down in a Reed Cup match against Hotspur on the Scottish island when Blue the Macaw plunged in among the players and began squawking loudly. His unexpected intervention was brief but pivotal, with Stromness going on to win. So they say, what put the parrot among the players? The perturbed pet was apparently being pursued by a murder of crows and some girls and became disoriented. His owner, Carla Brown, offered an explanation, an apology on social media, and later on BBC Radio Orkney. She wrote on Facebook, Blue was playing and like a gazillion crows, he was just trying to get back to me, which he did. We are both very sorry. So his name is Blue. I'll go and read more about the adventures of Blue. So they've got a picture of Blue and Carla Brown on the page. Is it within the camera shot? Well, it's very precarious, but that's the image of Blue. That can it come to the So Blue and Carla Brown. What are the items that we have to update on other than those ones? Let's check what we are talking about in context. As I said, I looked for the Times magazine, it is not there. I think the magazine is can't find the picture of Rory Stewart in the results about the Times magazine of the last. So we shall be ending this particular incomplete edition at 1 hour and 7 minutes, 1 hour and 8 minutes, let's say.